Kissinger has famously said, China's rise is inevitable. There's nothing we can do to prevent it. There's nothing we should do to prevent it. The only thing we can do is to engage with it. To engage with China, whether you as a business leader or a policymaker or a policy influencer, I would say that the starting point for strategizing is to understand the major thrusts of how China is changing the global economic structure. First, China is the single biggest factor to transform the global economy from a unipolar to a multipolar world. According to many projections, by 2040, China, India, US, in that order, plus EU, will account each about 20% of the world's GDP, with the rest of the economies accounting the rest of the 20%. Meaning that if you want to become a global player, or if you want to stay as a global leader, do you have a robust strategy? Do you have the solid footprint in each of those mega rising poles? Second, the rise of China and India, plus overall the rise of the developing economies overall, is making every industry a growth industry on a global basis. 60% of the world's population lives in developing economies that are growing at 3 times the pace of the developed ones. China and India, mega markets. Millions of people there are buying their first mobile phones, their first TV, their first car, their first house, their first bottle of wine. Although the Chinese appreciate wine by mixing wine with Coke, they do not know how to appreciate wine, but nonetheless they're buying. And they're buying their first tickets traveling abroad. It's really hard for me to name a mature industry in China. So they represent mega growth opportunities. If you just look at the auto sector, which has implications for many industries. In 1999, auto production in developing economies accounted maybe, or was about 1/10 of the auto production in the developed economies. Last year, it reached half. By 2020, auto production in developing economies could reach that of the developed economies. China alone this year is poised to become the largest auto producer as well as the largest auto market. United States has declined from a peak of 17 million units a year in 2007 down to 10 million a year this year. China is going to surpassing US to become the largest auto market, selling 12 million autos a year. Now look at General Motors, right? Bankrupt in the US, recorded a 35% growth in the first half year in China. Ford Motor, 14% growth in the first half year. In comparison, auto sales in the United States declined by 48% this year. If you look at the pharmaceutical market, emerging Asia today was about 1/4 that of the North American market. By 2020, it could be as large or bigger than North American market. Latin America right now accounts for 6% of the world's pharma market. By 2020, it could be twice as much. Pharma market is growing over 20% in China. And third, the rise of China and India have contributed directly or indirectly to the commodity boom. Over the last 10 years, commodity prices have been increasing dramatically, although they have declined this year. But if you look at a long-term perspective, over the next 10 years, they're going to grow as long as the developing economies led by China and India will continue to grow. Now, this has been particularly advantageous for this region's economy. Okay? While commodities, the primary commodities, accounted for about 30% of the world's total trade, for this region, it accounted for 70% of your export. Fourth, the rise of China and India meant that not only 2.5 billion consumers joined the world economy, 1.5 billion workers and 20 million scientists and engineers joined the workforce. This has a huge impact, not only on the manufacturing cost, but also on the pace and cost of innovation. If you look at the labor cost comparison, blue labor costs about $1 an hour in China and India, $3 an hour in Brazil, $4 in Hungary, $18 in the United Kingdom, and more than $20 in Japan and United States. If you look at the white-collar jobs, a fresh engineer graduate from college costs about $5,000 a year. National average for software professionals costs about $15,000 total compensation a year. That is about 10 to 15% that of the cost in the developed economies. So this means that for global companies, this offers a major opportunity to dramatically decrease your cost structure. Okay. To understand the significance of this, let me use an example. For example, Accenture increased its workforce in India from 400 in 2001 to 40,000 in 2007. And 39,000 of those do global projects. Now, if we just assume that there is a $40,000 per employee cost difference, $40,000 per employee, you time almost 40,000 headcounts. That's $1.6 billion cost savings, ladies and gentlemen. That's not a small sum, even for a big company like Accenture. Without that, Accenture would either be a less profitable company or would have grown much slower. Oh, that's the danger of doing this behind my back. Okay, bear with me. That's the Accenture story. Now, companies go to China and India not just for the cost reason. It is also because they produce the largest number of engineers and scientists. But some would say, so what? Big deal, you have a lot of people, but can they do innovative works? Aren't they imitators, not innovators? I have to admit that the Chinese are pretty good at imitation. So back then, you have read that book called Who Moved My Cheese? Soon after it became a bestseller in the US, in China's book market, you found, Who Stole My Cheese? Who moved my dumplings? So they're smart at imitation, but they are also rapidly becoming innovation powerhouse. It's not just what I say so. If you look at the most objective data, the patents granted, approved by the US Patent Office over the last 5 years, China origin patents granted by USPTO has been growing at 30% a year, India at 15% a year, while it was almost flat for the rest of the world. If you project from this trend, by 2020, China origin patents granted by USPTO could be as large as the patents granted for UK, Germany, France, and Italy combined. So seeing China only as an imitator, not as an innovator, is yesterday's knowledge. And of course, the impact on the environment. Of course, we can say that, on per capita basis, China's emission of carbon dioxide is only a small fraction of Europe's and the US, or we can say most of the pollution was put there by the developed economies. But we also have to admit, this year, China will be the biggest emitter of carbon dioxide. China has to do something about the environment. And I think they're putting their acts together. It's not because of the pressure from the US, but it's also because they have to do this for their own citizens.